Elias wiped his hands on his apron and looked around the small kitchen. The outpost had seen better days. Rust crept along the metal walls and flickering lights made shadows dance across the floor. Outside, the blackness of space stretched endlessly, broken only by a few blinking stars. The station was old, forgotten by most, and almost everyone who passed through treated it like a place to rest, refuel, and move on. But to Elias it was home. At least, as much of a home as a lonely human could have at the edge of the galaxy. The smell of his cooking filled the cramped kitchen. Protein patties sizzling in recycled oil, a few scraps of vegetables and some hard bread warmed in the oven. It was nothing fancy, but it was honest food. He had learned long ago that the humans who stopped here wanted something simple, something that reminded them of Earth. They didn't care about fancy flavors or exotic spices. They wanted comfort. Elias stirred the patties slowly, humming a soft tune from an old Earth song. His mind wandered to the stories he had heard from travelers. Tales of alien worlds, star empires, and creatures so powerful that humans were like ants beneath their feet. Most of the stories scared him, but he also loved them. They reminded him that there was more to the universe than rusted metal walls and recycled air. A sudden alarm beep made him jump. He turned quickly to the station sensor panel. The screen flickered, showing a ship approaching. Elias frowned. It wasn't registered in the docking schedule. The ship wasn't one of the usual cargo freighters or mining shuttles. Its shape was strange, long and sleek, with lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Elias felt a chill run down his spine. He should have locked the doors and called security, but curiosity got the better of him. He wiped his hands and walked to the observation window. The ship hovered silently outside the station, larger than any vessel he had seen. It seemed almost alive. The lights glimmered, then dimmed. And for a moment, everything was still. Back in the kitchen, the aroma of his food was stronger than ever. Elias hadn't noticed that he had cooked extra portions that day, thinking he might have more visitors than usual. He carried a tray of food toward the common area, where a few tired miners were sitting. But the room was empty. The humans who had been there minutes ago had disappeared, leaving only the faint sound of their breathing in the vents. Confused, Elias set the tray on a table. He glanced at the sensor again. The strange ship was gone. No warning, no message, nothing. He rubbed his eyes. Maybe I'm tired, he muttered to himself. Or maybe it's just another old system glitch. He shook his head and returned to the kitchen. The smell of the food was comforting, and he felt a small sense of pride. He had made something that mattered even if no one was there to eat it. He plated the patties and arranged the bread neatly. Even when no one noticed, he liked to think that his meals were a small act of care in a universe that often had none. Then, without warning, a shadow passed across the wall. Elias froze. He slowly turned, half expecting to see one of the miners returning. But it wasn't human. The shape was huge, tall and broad, moving with a grace he couldn't describe. The lights glinted off smooth, almost scaly skin, and Elias's heart pounded. His first thought was to run, but his legs felt like they were stuck to the floor. The creature bent its massive head toward the tray of food. Its eyes were deep, glowing faintly like molten gold, and Elias felt as if it could see into his soul. The shadow moved closer, and with surprising delicacy, it took one of the patties. Then another. And another. Elias couldn't believe what he was seeing. The creature wasn't attacking. It wasn't destroying the station. It was eating. And it seemed pleased. He swallowed hard and whispered, What are you? The creature didn't answer, at least not in words. Its eyes stayed on him, and Elias felt a strange warmth, almost like understanding, passing between them. He realized, with a mixture of fear and awe, that he had just fed something far beyond his comprehension. Something ancient. Something powerful. As the creature finished the meal, it straightened, towering above the kitchen, and for a moment, Elias felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. And yet he also felt important. In a universe full of cold and danger, his simple act of cooking had mattered to this being. The ship's engines hummed suddenly, breaking the silence. The creature turned and moved toward the exit. Elias barely had time to see it vanish into the docking bay before the station returned to its usual emptiness. The strange ship lifted silently into space and disappeared, leaving only the smell of the meal behind. Elias stood in the middle of the kitchen, stunned. He didn't know who or what he had fed. He didn't know what it meant. But deep inside he felt that something had changed. Not just in the universe, but in him too. And without realizing it, Elias had started a story that would echo across worlds, a story that began in a forgotten outpost with a human chef, a tray of simple food, and a creature that could have ended everything. The dragon god floated in the silence of space, his massive ship moving like a shadow among the stars. He had tasted the human chef's meal and something inside him stirred, something he had not felt in centuries. Hunger, yes, but not the simple physical kind he had known. This hunger was different. It was warmth. It was memory. It was curiosity. For countless eons he had traveled the galaxy, a force of destruction and judgment. Worlds that disobeyed the ancient laws were erased with little thought. No creature had ever stopped him, no species had made him pause. But now, a simple meal, one cooked by a human with rough hands and kind eyes, had changed the way he saw the universe. He examined the food again, recalling the taste. A soft patty, a hint of spice, the texture of bread baked with care. In it he sensed the human's life, struggle, hope, and even small joys. Each flavor was a story, each bite a memory. And in that moment he understood something new. Humans were fragile, yes. But they were also persistent, creative, and capable of caring in ways he had never imagined. The dragon god's golden eyes, which had once burned with judgment, now shimmered with thought. He remembered the wars he had fought, the stars he had silenced, and the civilizations he had erased. And for the first time he questioned the rightness of his actions. Could there be something in this species that deserved more than destruction? Could there be a reason to pause? He descended to observe the station once more, unseen by its sensors. Elias was there, cooking again. The human moved with focus, arranging food carefully on trays, cleaning the kitchen, humming softly. The dragon god watched silently, astonished by the small acts of care. Each patty flipped, each slice of bread placed just so. It was more than sustenance. It was love in the simplest form. The human chef did not notice the massive being watching him. He did not know that the fate of his galaxy hung quietly on this observation. Elias simply worked as he always had, driven by a sense of duty, habit, and kindness. It was ordinary, but in its ordinariness, it held power. The dragon god considered speaking, revealing himself. But he hesitated. This human was fearless in his own quiet way. He did not flee at the sight of unknown danger. He did not panic at strange signals. He simply worked, offering comfort in the form of food. And for some reason the god respected that. He remembered the other species he had judged. The wars he had enforced. The fear he had sown across planets. And he realized something terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Humans were not like the others. They could fight, yes, and they could survive, but what made them different was their care for each other, even when survival was uncertain. The dragon god's ship pulsed with light as he processed these new thoughts. For the first time in millennia he felt uncertainty and with it possibility. He could destroy the galaxy as he had always planned. Or he could stop. He could allow humans to live, to grow, to change the universe in their own imperfect, chaotic way. And then, without warning, he felt a pull he did not expect. A desire to interact, not as a god of destruction, but as an observer. He shaped his massive form into something less terrifying, something smaller, almost humanoid, though his scales still glimmered faintly like molten gold. He could walk among humans without frightening them. At least he hoped he could. He entered the station quietly, moving past the blinking consoles and empty corridors. Elias hummed in the kitchen, unaware of the enormous presence just beyond the doorway. The dragon god's eyes followed every movement. The human plated food with care, tasting each bite as he went, adjusting the seasoning, smiling to himself as if speaking to a friend who wasn't there. For the dragon god it was mesmerizing. Every small action, every tiny decision, was proof of human strength, creativity, and resilience. A species so fragile yet so full of life. And he realized, in a way he had never known, that he wanted to protect that life, not destroy it. Elias finally stepped back from the counter, exhausted but satisfied. He didn't see the glowing eyes watching him. He didn't know that the creature he had fed was deciding the fate of countless worlds based on his small, humble act of cooking. He simply cleaned his hands, wiped his apron, and prepared for the next round of meals. The dragon god stayed a moment longer, studying the human. He felt a strange warmth, a connection that had nothing to do with power or conquest. He understood that in this small outpost at the edge of the galaxy, he had tasted something that made him question everything he thought he knew. And as he left, moving back into the cold expanse of space, he knew one truth above all else. Humans were different. They were fragile, yes, but they had something no other species possessed: heart. And that heart, he realized, might just be the force that could change the galaxy. For Elias, it was just another night at a forgotten outpost, cooking for empty tables and wandering miners. But for the dragon god, it was the beginning of a new story, one that could reshape the fate of two worlds. The next morning, Elias woke to the usual hum of the outpost. The black metal walls and flickering lights felt unchanged, but something in the air was different. He couldn't say what. Perhaps it was the silence of the hallways, or the faint shimmer of dust in the sunlight that crept through the small observation windows. He shrugged it off, focusing on his work. Cooking never failed him. He moved through the kitchen with practiced motions, chopping vegetables and stirring the recycled protein paste. His hands were steady, his mind calm. The strange ship from the night before was nowhere in sight, and Elias had convinced himself that it had been a trick of the lights, a hallucination brought on by long hours and too little sleep. But he was wrong. The dragon god had returned. This time he walked through the station like a shadow, unseen by most sensors and unnoticed by the crew. He had taken a form smaller than his true self, one that would not terrify ordinary humans. His scales were still faintly golden, glimmering in the overhead lights, but his presence was quiet, careful, curious. He watched Elias move around the kitchen. The human paused to taste the sauce, frowning slightly before adjusting the seasoning. He hummed a tune under his breath. It was simple, ordinary, yet it drew the dragon god closer. Every motion, every small decision, spoke of something deeper: patience, care, and pride in one's work. The dragon god stepped forward, almost too cautious to breathe. Elias, humming softly, didn't notice the enormous being now standing near the counter. The human continued plating food, arranging the patties and bread in neat rows. He glanced at the trays, satisfied with his work, and set them aside. Then Elias turned. The dragon god froze, expecting fear or panic. But instead, the human blinked once and said, "Good morning." "Oh, you're new here, aren't you?" The dragon god's jaw, if he had one in this form, almost dropped. Elias had not screamed. He had not run. He had spoken politely, casually, as if meeting a stranger at the door. "Yes," the dragon god replied, his voice deep but softened to match his smaller form. "I am passing through." Elias tilted his head, studying him. "Well, you came at a good time. Breakfast is ready." He gestured to the trays of food, smiling. "Sit. Don't worry about me, I'll just keep cooking anyway." The dragon god blinked. No one had ever invited him to eat. Not in centuries. Not in millennia. He had been feared. Worshipped, yes, but never treated with such simple kindness. He looked at the trays and, almost hesitantly, reached for a piece of bread. As he tasted it, he felt something stir inside him again. Warmth. Memory. Curiosity. The food carried the human's life in its flavors. The struggles, the care, the hope of someone who had no power in the galaxy but still gave. It was humbling. Elias watched silently, unsure if his guest would react violently or politely. But the dragon god only nodded slightly, appreciating the simple act. "This is remarkable," he said. "I have never tasted anything like it." "Thanks," Elias replied, shrugging. "I just make it the way my grandmother taught me. Nothing fancy, just food." For the dragon god, it was more than food. It was proof. Proof that humans were something more than fragile creatures. That even in their small acts they carried strength, creativity, and care that could change worlds. "You are not afraid?" the dragon god asked, suddenly curious. Most would be terrified. Elias wiped his hands on his apron and leaned against the counter. "Why should I be? You didn't hurt me. You're just another traveler." His eyes met the dragon god's faintly golden ones, unflinching, calm. "Besides, if I panic, the kitchen gets messy. And I don't like messes." The dragon god felt something unfamiliar: admiration. Here was a human who had no weapons, no armor, yet stood calmly in front of a god, unafraid. The creature realized then that courage didn't always roar. Sometimes, it hummed softly while stirring a pot. Elias gestured to the empty tables. "Sit. I'll get you a full tray. You look hungry." The dragon god sat, unsure of the proper posture, unsure if this simple human had any idea how significant this moment was. And yet he ate. Slowly, carefully, savoring every bite. With each taste, he saw more of the human's life, more of the small sacrifices and quiet joys that shaped him. "You are remarkable," the dragon god said between bites. "You do not know the power you carry." Elias laughed softly. "Power? Me? I just cook. I feed people. That's my job. The universe has plenty of powerful beings. I'm just me." The dragon god smiled, or as close to a smile as he could manage. "Perhaps that is exactly why your actions matter so much. You do not seek power, yet your care has touched me in a way no weapon ever could." Elias shrugged again, modest and unaware. I just do my best. Someone likes it, great. If not, I try again tomorrow. The dragon god felt something he had never felt before: hope. Perhaps humanity, fragile and chaotic as it was, could survive, even thrive in the face of the galaxy's dangers. Perhaps one small human could change more than 1,000,000 soldiers or 1,000 starships ever could. And for the first time in eons, the dragon god realized that he wanted to stay. Not forever, perhaps, but long enough to learn, to understand, and maybe even protect this tiny, defiant species. Elias finished his work for the morning and looked at his guest. Well, that's breakfast. If you want lunch, you'll have to come back. But I warn you, I'm getting better all the time. The dragon god laughed, a sound like rolling thunder softened by sunlight. I will return, he said. And next time I hope to learn more of your ways. Elias smiled. I'll be here. Don't worry. In the small, forgotten outpost at the edge of the galaxy, a human chef and a god sat together over a simple meal. And in that quiet moment, the balance of power, the fate of worlds, and the meaning of strength all began to shift, quietly, imperceptibly, but irrevocably. The galaxy was preparing for war. Across countless star systems, fleets were arming, planets were reinforcing shields, and leaders whispered warnings to each other. They had all heard the rumors. An ancient, unstoppable force was moving through space and no weapon could stop it. Elias, in his small kitchen on the forgotten outpost, had no idea. He stirred a pot of stew, tasting it carefully and adjusting the salt. The hum of the station's engines was the only sound, a quiet companion to his work. To him, the universe was distant, made of stars and ships he would never see, problems he could not solve. All that mattered was this moment: making food, keeping the kitchen clean, and doing his small part to care for the travelers who passed through. But the dragon god knew. From the shadows of space, his massive fleet moved like a golden storm. Ships larger than entire cities cut through the void, silent and precise, ready to bring judgment to those who had defied him for centuries. Each captain, each admiral, each soldier believed victory was certain. They had seen the dragon god in battle before. They had never lost. Yet as the fleet approached the first systems, something unexpected happened. The dragon god paused. He had tasted Elias's cooking, watched him work, seen the small, patient courage of humans. And for the first time in his immortal life, he hesitated. On the outpost, Elias cleaned his knives and arranged bread on a tray. He noticed nothing unusual except for a subtle feeling, a tension in the air he couldn't explain. Perhaps it was just another quiet day, he thought. He hummed a tune, moving with steady hands. The kitchen was his world, and in it he was safe. The dragon god watched him from the bridge of his flagship, the largest vessel in the fleet. His golden eyes were thoughtful. He saw the humans below, organizing defenses, preparing weapons, shouting orders. They believed they were ready to face him, ready to fight against a being older than their histories. He looked down at the small chef, standing calmly in his kitchen, and understood the truth. Humanity's strength was not in fleets or shields. It was in its courage, its care, and its refusal to give up. He made a decision. The fleet slowed. Ships that had moved faster than light now drifted in the void. The dragon god sent a message across the network, a signal that every fleet in the galaxy could hear. Stand down. The humans are under my protection. Confusion erupted across the systems. Weapons were deactivated. Shields fell. Admirals stared at the screens trying to understand. No one had ever heard such a command from a dragon god. No one had ever been spared. Back on the outpost, Elias had no idea what was happening. He served breakfast to a group of tired miners, laughing at a joke one of them made. He cleaned pots, wiped counters, and plated food with care. To him it was just another morning. He did not know that the act of making food, of showing kindness and persistence, had stopped a war that could have destroyed countless worlds. The dragon god descended, this time moving through space like a gentle shadow. His massive form filled the docking bay, but he made no move to harm. Elias looked up, startled but not frightened. Back so soon? He asked, smiling. I hope you like breakfast. The dragon god's voice rumbled softly. I have seen enough, human. You have reminded me of what matters. Your courage, your care, your small acts, they have value beyond measure. I will not destroy these worlds. Elias blinked. You mean it? All of them? All of them, the dragon god replied. Because of you they live. Because of you, I see the value of life beyond power and conquest. Elias shook his head, still unsure. I'm just cooking, he said humbly. I'm not important. I'm not strong. I'm just me. The dragon god stepped closer, massive but careful. You are the strongest I have ever known. Not because of weapons, not because of fleets, but because of your heart. You have changed me. You have changed the galaxy. For a moment, the outpost was silent. The miners, the few humans on the station, all stared in awe. They had expected death, and instead they saw mercy. They saw a god humbled by something as simple as food, by the quiet courage of a single human. Elias smiled softly. I just do my best. That is enough, the dragon god said. That is more than enough. And now, these worlds will have a chance to grow, to thrive, and to learn from what humans can offer. The fleet behind the dragon god slowly withdrew, their immense power now silent, waiting but no longer a threat. News spread across the galaxy that an ancient force had passed judgment, and instead of destruction, it had granted life. Leaders, soldiers, and civilians alike were stunned. The galaxy had been spared, and no one could explain why, except for whispers of a small, humble human, cooking in a forgotten outpost at the edge of space. Elias returned to his kitchen, unaware of the legend forming in his name. He stirred the stew, tasted it, and smiled. Another meal, another chance to care for someone even in a small way. And somewhere in space, the dragon god watched, knowing that the courage of a single human had prevented a war that no one else could have stopped. In that moment, Elias's simple life became a turning point for the galaxy. A forgotten outpost had become the place where hope triumphed over fear. And the dragon god, ancient and powerful, had learned that even the smallest act of kindness could change the course of countless worlds. The galaxy had begun to breathe again. Worlds that had braced for destruction now repaired their cities and rebuilt their fleets. Trade routes reopened, planets shared resources, and leaders cautiously spoke of peace instead of war. But most of all, a story spread quietly from star system to star system. The story of a human who had stopped a dragon god with nothing but courage, kindness, and food. Elias woke in his small kitchen on the forgotten outpost, unaware that his life had changed the fate of entire civilizations. He stretched, yawned, and started the morning routine, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, and cleaning counters. The station was peaceful, just as it always had been. And to him that was enough. But today there was a subtle difference. A faint warmth seemed to linger in the air, a feeling he could not explain. It was as if the universe itself had noticed him. He hummed softly, moving through the kitchen, arranging food on trays, and plating bread with the care that had always defined his work. The dragon god had returned. Not as a god of war, not as a judge of worlds, but as a quiet protector. His massive form was smaller now, less intimidating, yet still filled with power that no one could ignore. He moved through the outpost with care, observing Elias as he worked. "You are still cooking," the dragon god said, his voice rumbling softly but without threat. Elias looked up, smiling. "Of course. Someone's got to do it. Hungry travelers don't cook themselves, you know." The dragon god studied him, his glowing golden eyes reflecting a strange mixture of respect and admiration. "You do not realize the impact of your actions. Entire worlds live because of you." Elias laughed softly, shaking his head. "I'm just a cook. I don't change worlds. I just feed people." "No," the dragon god corrected. "You do more than feed. You give hope. You show courage. You show that even small beings can shape the course of the universe." Elias felt a strange pride but also humility. He had always thought of himself as insignificant, just a human doing his job in a forgotten outpost. But the dragon god's words carried weight. Perhaps humans truly were capable of more than they realized. In the days that followed, the outpost became a hub for travelers from many worlds. Aliens came to taste Elias's food, drawn by stories of the human who had fed a god. They marveled at his simple meals, the care he put into each dish, and the quiet courage he showed in a universe full of dangers. And everywhere the dragon god went, he carried Elias's story, teaching other civilizations that strength did not always lie in weapons or power, but in heart and kindness. Elias never sought fame. He never asked for recognition. He continued to cook, to serve, and to care for those around him. Yet slowly the outpost changed. Ships that had once ignored it now came for guidance, seeking to understand how a single human could alter the galaxy. And Elias, ever humble, simply fed them, smiled at them, and carried on with his work. One day the dragon god returned again. This time he did not hide his immense form. He walked through the station's halls, towers of golden scales glinting in the lights. The humans and aliens there gasped, but Elias stood calmly, moving around him as if he were just another visitor. "I have come to thank you," the dragon god said, his voice deep and resonant. "Not for feeding me but for teaching me. You have shown me that life is more than power. That small beings can carry courage, hope, and care that even gods cannot ignore. Elias looked up from the tray he was carrying. "I don't know what to say. I just cook. That's all I do." "That is enough," the dragon god said. "It is more than enough. And it has changed the fate of 2 worlds, and soon the entire galaxy. Because your courage, human, proves that hope can come from the smallest acts." Elias felt a warmth spread through him. He realized that even a simple act like cooking a meal with care could ripple through time and space in ways he could never imagine. He had never wanted to be a hero. He had only wanted to do what was right in front of him. And somehow that had been enough to change everything. Over the following years, the dragon god took a new role in the galaxy. No longer a force of destruction, he became a guardian of worlds, protecting civilizations from threats both external and internal. He taught them patience, mercy, and the importance of compassion, inspired by one small human's courage. Elias continued to cook. His kitchen never changed, but his reputation spread across the stars. Travelers from far-off systems came to taste his food and hear his story. They did not come for wealth or power, they came for the hope that humans could inspire, for the reminder that courage and care were more powerful than any weapon. And though Elias never left his outpost, he left a mark on the universe that would never fade. In the quiet hum of his kitchen, in the careful plating of bread and patties, he carried the truth, that even the smallest acts of kindness could shape the fate of worlds, that heart could rival power, and that humans, ordinary, imperfect, yet brave, were capable of changing the galaxy forever. The dragon god often watched from a distance, sometimes joining Elias at the table, sometimes simply observing. In every moment, he carried the memory of that first meal, the taste that had awakened something long buried in him. And in his heart, he knew that the galaxy would never be the same, not because of fleets or weapons, but because of one human who had cooked with care and in doing so had saved countless lives. Elias, ever unaware of the full scope of his actions, smiled as he served another tray of food. A small act, a humble life, yet a ripple that had reached across the stars. And somewhere, across countless worlds, the galaxy remembered, it was the courage and heart of humans that could change everything.